Welcome into the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com. I'm Tom Leach, along with Keeneland's Director of Simulcasting, Jim Goodman, and we are going to, in this particular podcast, take a look at the Undercard stakes races at Pimlico, as well as a couple of other big races around the country, and then we'll do a separate podcast for just the Preakness stakes. So, Jim, we will begin. We're not going to look at all of the stakes at Pimlico because we got a ton of them, but we're going to take a look at some of the ones where we had maybe best opinions or best betting races. And we'll start with the first of four graded stakes on their card. It's in the fifth race, the Grade 3 Maryland Sprint Championship. Happy My Way is the big favorite in there. Who did you go with?
Happy My Way is the big favorite. The last four buyers are 101 or 100, 101, 101, 105. So that's going to be big favorite. I think Action Andy has a shot from the outside. Action Andy actually has a couple of Pimlico races back a couple of years ago, or last year ran in this race. Actually didn't show up that day, but the recent form has been good. I think can probably track the speed from the outside and maybe pull an upset here. So I'm going to go with Action Andy, and I'm going to do a $10 exacta box maybe with 2-6 using the Happy My Way and Action Andy and exacta. So it's only a 6-horse field, so not a great betting race, but I think those two are if you get a price on Action Andy at 8-1, that might be worth a wager.
I'm going to take Saludos Amigos, the 4, just won last Saturday up in New York, and Jacobson's a sharp claiming trainer, and guys like that know how to strike while the iron's hot. So, and they also, the kind of what sealed it for me is that they get Castellano to ride. So those two things lead me to Saludos Amigos, and I will key him in exactas with Happy My Way, Action Andy, I think is good value there, and Lemon Drop Dream would be the other one I would use. But the key is Saludos Amigos in that one for me. Sixth race is one of those turf sprints are almost always good betting races, and this one should be no different. 3-year-olds and up going 5 furlongs on the turf. You got several horses that came out of a stake at Keeneland that was won by Ageless. Ageless is back in here against several of the ones that she beat that day. I ended up taking a stab. I don't like the post position on this horse, but To My Valentine out of the 13 hole. It's the second off a layoff. It's a really good angle for Wesley Ward. And I remember talking to him about this filly for one of the Keeneland YouTube channel interviews at the spring meet. And he really likes her. And just that was her first time out for the year. And she tracked a hot pace and faded. And I could see her improving off that. And maybe being first out off a layoff was a little fresh and a little closer to the pace. I could see her maybe sitting a couple of lengths off, hopefully getting a decent trip from out in the 13 hole and pretty good value. So I'm going to use her. And then I think Ageless is one you have to use in horizontal wagers. All We Want for Xmas coming out of the same race here at Keeneland, the 1 horse. The 12 Sensible Lady won this race at a big price last year, 3 for 3 at Pimlico. The 12. And then 11, Jewel of a Cat for Ben Perkins. I'd use all of those probably in horizontal wagers. But for this particular race, To My Valentine will be the key and exactas with those other 4. What about you?
I'd use all of them plus a couple, I think. It's a wide open race. Anytime you have a 5 furlong sprint with 14 horses, you just don't really know. The horse that I like is All We Want for Xmas. I don't much care for the 1 hole, but she broke in the air last time out in the race in the Giants Causeway at Keeneland. I think a couple of things. You just toss that one completely, and you look back at the races at Gulfstream and Tampa, and she was right there. And Serpa takes the ride back. He rode her in at Tampa and Gulfstream. So I like her if she gets out. You know, if she breaks in the air, she's dead again in 5 furlongs. But I like her on top. I like Ageless. I like Madame Geary, who comes out of the Belmont race. She's actually. If you look back at the quality, I think you can make a case for her because she's really raced against some nice horses. She lost to Shrinking Violet a couple of times. All We Want for Christmas is in her past performances as well. But I think you make a case for her. I think you make a case for Quality Last at 12-1 with Castellano up. Same reasoning you used in the last race. I mean, he doesn't ride them for fun, and I think she set the pace in the Laurel race with Ageless and All We Want for Xmas last time out. So I think you make a case for a lot of them here. I'm going to take All We Want for Xmas just barely.
Ninth race starts the late all-stakes pick 4 that will culminate with the Preakness. We'll take a look first at the Grade 3 Gallarette for Fillies and Bears 3 and up at a mile and a 16th on the turf. and it's supposed to be very rainy on Friday there, but just a beautiful day on Saturday. So the turf course will have some give in it, but I think everything will stay on the turf certainly on Saturday, and I wouldn't think you'd have a whole lot of scratches out of those races. The Galleret is a well-matched group of older fillies and mares. Somali Lemonade was a nice winner. I think it was her 5-year-old debut here at Keeneland back last month. Where did you go in the Galleret?
Somali Lemonade is my pick. That was a gutsy win at Keeneland. She got a fairly easy lead and then drifted out a little bit, but she held on for the win in her first race back since January 4th, and I think that sets her up very well for this one. So I would key Somali Lemonade on top here. I would also use Starstruck, the 9-horse. She's run against a lot of classy fillies and mares, and I think she fits well here. And then the other one, another horse that had some success at Keeneland, Strathnaver, out of Great Britain with Grand Motion, and she's got some great past performances and against some very tough horses. And the Double Dog Dare was a nice race. She got beat by a length and a half by Sisterly Love, and I think that sets up her for this race as well. But I would take Somali Lemonade on top, and I would key her in trifectas with the 7 and the 9 with probably all.
I'm going to take all three of those in the pick 4 with the horse that I'm going to make my pick, the 10, What's the Chances, for Chad Brown. He's very good off a layoff. Not wild about the post position, but I think it's a real classy horse. And Castellano rides again. He's outstanding overall, but in particular on the turf, I think. And hopefully I'm going to bet that he can work out a trip, and I think I'll get a decent price on this horse. So I think probably the best bet is just a 4-horse exacta box of those 4. I think there's a real good chance 2 of those 4 will be in the exacta. But What's the Chances is going to be the win pick for me, and use all 4 of those in a pick 4 ticket. Next race is the Sir Barton for 3-year-olds at 1 mile and a 16th. And over the years, we've seen horses use this as a stepping stone to the Belmont. Sarava came out of this race and won the Belmont at a huge price over 10 years ago. And I'm guessing that that's what they may be thinking with Class Leader for Neil Howard and Lane's End. He has really gotten better since they put him around 2 turns this year. I like that Jimmy Graham goes up to ride this horse. He's been on him. Neil Howard shipping in here is a pretty conservative guy. He could have found an allowance spot for this horse. I look at the pedigree on this horse, and I think it's is that a Chris S. mare, and this looks like a horse that's bred to get 1.5 miles. And I just have a hunch. I haven't heard anybody say this. I just have a hunch that they may be thinking Class Leader runs big here. We'll put him back in the Belmont Stakes because of that pedigree. So Class Leaders is my pick in here. I'm going to use him with 3 other horses, key him in exactas with the 2 6 spot, the 6 Starry Moon, and the 8 Ground Control, who's entered, I think, in every stakes race on the Pimlico card on Saturday. He's entered, I think, realistically in 3 different races. So obviously he's only going to run in one of those, and if he goes here, I would include him in there. But Class Leader is the one I kind of like a lot in here. What about you?
It's scary that we agree on this race. I think he's the deserving favorite off those 2 wins at Fairgrounds. Didn't much care for the Hawthorne race in the Illinois Derby. He got beat by 9 lengths, but that class of horse is not in this race, and I think it is a good setup for him for longer races down the road, and I would take Class Leader on top. I would key him in trifectas with the 5 Master Lightning for Todd Pletcher and Johnny Velasquez, simply because it's Todd Pletcher and Johnny Velasquez.
Yeah.
Life in Shambles, is no rider is named, but Christophe Clement. The horse has won 2 in a row, and stretching him out to 1 mile and 16th off a couple of wins, one at Gulfstream and one at Aqueduct. So I would take him. Don't know who he's going to have on his back. 6 spot is also usable. The 2 horses that you mentioned, Ground Control and Charge Now for Bill Mott on the outside, again with no rider. These TPs came up a little early, so I guess they hadn't named the rider yet. But those horses are all I would use. Would go like 7 deep in the pick 4 that we're going to talk about in just a minute.
The 11th race is the Grade 2 Dixie for 3-year-olds and up on the turf at 1 mile and a 16th. And this is a nice group here. I don't see any real standout. I didn't anyway. How did you see this?
Well, I picked Utley in the past, and he's 8-1 for Jonathan Shepard with Edgar Prado, and I picked Utley. I don't have a strong opinion, but I think he offers value. I think it's his 3rd race of his form cycle. He's got 90 buyer, 93 buyer at Keeneland and Churchill in a mile and 16th. He goes back to a mile and 16th here. Prado is not quite the rider Rosario is, but Prado is certainly a capable rider, and he's on the outside. He ought to be able to track the speed. Charming Kitten for Todd Pletcher and Velasquez and Kenny Ramsey, consistent performer with a lot of back class. And Hey Leroy, the 6 horse, who's seems to charge down the lane. He's had one bad race in his last 9 or 10. I mean, he's just always there, and I think he's a very consistent performer and used probably maybe underneath a little bit. He's 5-2 morning line. I wouldn't bet him at 5-2, but I would take him underneath. So I would use Utley on top of Charming Kitten and Hey Leroy.
I ended up going with a price here, Nutello. Grand Motion is his base is not real far from Pimlico, and he often does well, it seems like, on this day. And he puts this horse in here. This horse came into Motion's barn from Europe last summer, ran a pretty good third in a grade 1 at Saratoga, and then his form just went south. I don't know what happened, but when it made a couple of starts and was just awful, they laid him off, and then he came back with a really good effort. The buyer number was close to what he ran up at Saratoga last summer. And if he improves off that, I think he's a player, and even back to that number just kind of suggests that he's back in form. And he's by Lemon Drop Kid, and that sire line, I think, tends to like a little bit of a give in the ground, which there figures to be after all the rain they're going to get at Pimlico on Friday. So 12-1 on the morning line. Nutello kind of intrigues me. And Charming Kitten, I think, is certainly one to use in here. Utley's make a good case for him. Up with the Birds, the 8, and the 7 Chamois, who's also entering the stake at Monmouth. We'll talk about in a minute. So I would use all of those. So that's 5 horses. I'd use all 5 of those in the pick 4, which concludes with the Preakness. So we're going to do the separate podcast of the Preakness. So let's take a look at our pick 4, starting with race 9. I said I was using the 4 horses in the Gallarette. In the Sir Barton, I'm going to use Class Leader and then use 6 spot. Then I'm going to use the 5 horses. I mentioned the Dixie. And then in the Preakness, I'll use California Chrome and Social Inclusion. What's your pick 4 ticket look? Oh, well, first the Dixie and then the pick 4.
The Dixie,
you mentioned the Dixie, I'm sorry. So the pick 4.
Yeah. The pick 4, I would use 379 first leg. That would be Somali Lemonade, Strathnaver, and Starstruck. I would go 7 deep in the second race with a 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 11, with Class Leader being my top pick there, the 10 horse. Then 6 deep in the next leg with 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Utley is my top pick, the 9, and then 3, 8 in the Preakness. That would be California Chrome and Social Inclusion. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, we're kind of along the same way of structuring our tickets.
That's a $126 ticket, so that's a little expensive. You can cut it down if you like something in the horses in the races that I went 6 deep and 7 deep, obviously. But I really like Somali Lemonade, and I really like California Chrome and Social Inclusion. I think if you get those 2 in the last leg, you're going to cover it. I think that's the 2 people the 2 horses to win the Preakness.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Let's take a look at a couple of other stakes. First, the ungraded Kirtana at Churchill Downs. Nice betting race, I thought here. I ended up going with Praya for Kenny McPeak. I think has had just a couple of bad post positions coming out of 10 holes, and now gets to break from the 4 hole. Third start off a layoff often is a peak effort, and Praya's run well on this turf course before. So I'm going to take Praya, and then Key, Her, and Exactas. This is a mile and 3/8 on the turf, by the way. Key, Her, and Exactas with the 7 Always Kitten, the 3 White Rose, and the 2 Honey Hughes, who was just sensational last time on the dirt, but has run well on the turf too. But Praya is going to be the pick for me. Honey Hughes I almost went with, but it's Praya for me. What about you in the Kirtana?
If they do rain it off the turf, I don't think that's going to happen at Churchill, but I would take Honey Hughes and I would single in the last the pick 4 because she looked great off the turf last time out. And I mean, she was 2-1, so everybody thought she might win, but she was unbelievable. And the 2 best races of her life have been off the turf. She won by 19 at Fairgrounds and won by 7 at Churchill. If it's on the turf, as it should be, I like Stop Talking Maria. I think that she has the controlling speed. Stuart Elliott rode so well at Keeneland. He hasn't been as hot at Churchill. He's only like 4 for 41. But he's a great rider. I think that she could be the controlling speed from the outside, and she's drawn perfectly to maybe get a fairly easy lead. And a mile and 3/8 is a tough distance. And a lot of times you'll see mile and a half races won on the lead, and I think there's a good chance that'll happen here. So I like Stop Talking Maria with some of the horses that you mentioned, Praya, White Rose, Honey Hughes, and Honey Lake, who's on the outside, also capable on her best day.
And we'll take a quick look at one other stake. It's the Grade 3 Red Bank at Monmouth on the turf for 3-year-olds and up, going a mile. Again, I've got some horses we've seen at Keeneland, like Winning Cause and Admiral Perry. Where did you go here?
I went with Chamois. I like Christophe Clement. He gets them ready off a layoff, and the horse really got better last fall, and the buyer progression of 81, 85, 87, 97 is very impressive. Christophe gets them ready. I don't think there's any doubt that he'll be ready to run, and I like him on top. I like Admiral Perry, maybe better on synthetic, but only got beat 2 3/4 lengths in this race last year by ZA approval, and there's no ZA approval in this race this year. So the other horse that I like, the 9-horse Rose Briar for James Sabelli. Had a 98 buyer last time out at Gulfstream and has 2 wins in a row. So I would take Chamois on top, 5 with 7, 9 with as many as you can afford in the trifecta, because it is a wide open field, I think.
I like Chamois for all the reasons you mentioned. If he goes in the race in Baltimore, then Winning Cause would be my next selection. I thought that race 2 back at Keeneland was a pretty good effort on the turf. And then Admiral Perry and Two Notch Road, the latter really loves the Monmouth turf course. Those would be the other ones that I would use. Best of luck on all of your wagers this weekend. It's a great card on Preakness Day at Pimlico, and should just be ideal weather from all of the reports. Remember, we have a separate podcast where we'll give you our betting strategy for the Preakness, and make sure you check that out. Best of luck on all your wagers. Keep your accounts funded at KeenelandSelect.com.